Hey, this is interesting. I've talked before about a tool called the defeasibility test that can be a useful tool when we're talking about politics. And I first heard about it, I believe, from Peter Boghossian, and then I learned about some other versions of it from others. And the idea is to interject and sort of slow down a conversation that might be going nowhere or where you're not likely to make any progress by asking what evidence would make you change your position. So if we were debating abortion, for example, I might say to someone who is an anti-choicer against abortion, what evidence, if I could present it to you, would get you to change your mind about this issue? And they might say, well, if you could prove a fetus isn't a person, or they might say, if I learned God didn't exist, then I might change my mind about abortion. It's not so much about what the answer is specifically, but about getting them to think, like, is there actually something that would change your mind, or are you irrationally tied to this idea? Are you tied to this idea not because of anything factual, so evidence doesn't even really matter? That's the sort of gist of the defeasibility test. And CNN host John Berman ran the defeasibility test on former Trump communications director Anthony Scaramucci. And Scaramucci completely imploded in the sense that he rambled for minute after minute after minute, not answering the question. The question was, what could Trump do to make you, Anthony Scaramucci, stop supporting him? And look at how long, like, I'm not even going to play it all because it goes on so long. Look at how long Scaramucci just rambles on without actually answering the question here.
As we sit here this morning, do you still support President Trump?
Yeah, of course I support. Hey, John, I'm a very loyal guy. Remember, I got fired 2 years ago.
Loyalty is one thing, but the question is, Anthony. Then, if the answer is yes, do you still support the president this morning? What would it take?
I understand that.
What would it take for you?
I do.
To stop supporting the president?
I think he's going in a direction, and I said this a couple of weeks ago on your air. He's going in a direction where there's a very large group of people that actually want to support him, that are actually begging him to give us reasons to support you. He's going in a direction where I guess he doesn't want that support, or he wants people to have this twisted like a pretzel loyalty test with him, where he's going to do things that are not making any sense. But I want you to go out there and sort of defend it, okay? And so I think there's a large group of people that are going to stop doing that. And then eventually people are going to say, look, I'm sorry, the value system and the rhetoric does not outweigh the policies, okay? And so at some point that will happen, and has not happened for me yet, but there's a lot of us out here. It's not just me. I'm a little bit more vocal, perhaps a tinge more courageous to admit it. But trust me, it's former White House administration officials, it's former cabinet members, it's former people in the American military. It's not just me. It's not like I'm the only one. I may be the only one saying it, but trust me, there's a very large group of people. If he keeps it up, they'll say, okay, the policies, they're great, but you know what? This sort of rhetoric and this sort of disunity sort of stuff is overpowering the policies.
So Scaramucci has no answer. He just repeated that confusing thing over and over again, and he's reduced to sort of a blubbering and stuttering mess. Really nicely done by John Berman. Not that it's that complex of a technique. You just say, oh, what would get you to change your mind about that? Now, it's common that in many situations, if you ask this to someone, what evidence, if I could present it to you, would change your mind? Very often people don't immediately have an answer, but sometimes, again, the point is not to have an answer, but to get the person thinking about whether they are blindly or irrationally attached to a position. For lots of these Trumpists, the answer actually is to this question, nothing. Nothing would get them to reconsider their support for Donald Trump. I had a funny caller, must have been maybe like a year ago, might have even been a year and a half ago on the show, big Trumpist who started by saying to me on the phone, if Trump doesn't build the wall during his first term, he doesn't have my support in 2020. And within about a minute, I said much more concretely, so you said if Trump does not build the wall before 2020, you don't vote for him in 2020. Is that right? And the Trumpist on the phone immediately started hedging and saying, well, I mean, it depends on why he doesn't build it. If he doesn't build it because Democrats get in the way, then that's different. It sort of depends. And then we very quickly figured out, actually, there really wasn't anything that would stop him from voting for Trump in 2020, because any failure of Trump or apparent failure of Trump, he was going to, after the fact, attribute blame for to someone else. In the case of the wall, it was going to be Democrats. So this is a really good question for exposing dogmatic ideologues. And then another one that can be productive. This one, my friend Jay Tomlinson, host of the Best of the Left podcast, told me about this one. Why do you think I hold this position on a particular issue? So it's much harder for people to say your position is basically because you're a moron that you've come to this conclusion, or you're a bad person. When you're starting to have a conversation about an issue, you actually say to someone, okay, let's talk about healthcare. You know my position. Before we start talking about it, why do you think I have the position I have about healthcare? And it is much more difficult for people to attribute bad faith when you actually say to them, tell me how you think I arrived at my conclusion. If you've had success with either or both of these techniques, let me know, maybe during live calls later on this week. I would love to hear from folks who have actually tried out some of these tactics.